Good evening and welcome. I am Linda Velto, the Associate Pastor of Good Shepherd United Church of Christ in Kerry. This meeting is called to order. Tonight, we are gathering as one wake for a non-partisan early assembly with candidates for Cary Town Council. Together, we will hear about the importance of a top pressure facing families in neighborhoods across Kerry, the need to preserve and construct affordable housing for working families and for seniors who wish to continue living in Kerry. Before we get to the business of this meeting, I would like to acknowledge that today is Veterans Day, a day to honor all who have served in our nation's armed forces in any capacity. To the veterans who are among us tonight, we offer our deepest gratitude for the sacrifices you have made in your service to our country. Now, as we begin our meeting, please join me in a spirit of prayer. O divine Creator, we give you thanks for this day and for the resources and knowledge that make it possible to come together in this virtual space. We give thanks for the dedicated people who have labored to bring One Wake to life, and for each individual who is giving of their time and energy to be here tonight. We represent just a snippet of the beautiful diversity you created, people of various faiths, ages, abilities, languages, experiences. Yet we come together with a common purpose: to seek equity and justice in making housing affordable for all of our Kerry residents. God, we are blessed and grateful to live in this nation and in this community of abundance. Yet shamefully, with all of the resources around us, some of your people go without, struggling to meet their basic needs. The psalmist says that the Lord hears the cry of the poor. O Holy One, give us your ears so that we may hear the cries of the most vulnerable among us. Give us your eyes so that we may see and recognize the needs of our neighbor, and then envision a community where all have what they need and more. Give us your heart so that we may be moved to build a community where residents don't have to choose between paying rent and feeding their family. A community where all have the resources to enjoy the fruits of their labors and can live abundant lives. Breathe into us your creative spirit, O God, and fill us with the courage to do the hard work of investing in an inclusive and just community. Amen. Now I'd like to introduce the Reverend Wes Spears-Newsome of Greenwood Forest Baptist Church.
Good evening. I'm Reverend Wesley Spears-Newsome, one of the pastors at Greenwood Forest here in Kerry. One Wake began more than 4 years ago in meetings between leaders and pastors in Wake County who were burned out and frustrated by the continual crises facing their communities. We felt like every day we were slapping Band-Aids on gaping wounds of housing, food insecurity, and all of the crises that are facing our families and our communities. We committed together to do more than just address symptoms, but to address the systemic roots of these problems in our community. We have continued these meetings and renewals of our commitments for the past 4.5 years. That's included conducting a listening campaign where we spoke in depth with over 4,000 Wake County residents, including people here in Kerry. We heard the stories about pressures in their lives, the stresses that keep them up at night. And as we built these relationships, One Wake has grown to an organization of 46 dues-paying institutions, representing a diversity of races, classes, faiths, and geographies, but united in our commitment to solidarity between our people and for transformation in Wake County. One Wake's purpose is not only advocacy for the policies that we care about. One Wake's purpose is for us to build power together to create change. We believe that power comes from organized people and organized money. The combined membership of our participating institutions represents more than 50,000 Wake County residents and thousands of residents of Kerry. We raise our own money. We are not beholden to outside dollars or political parties or candidates. We do not endorse candidates or parties, but only the interests and priorities and concerns of our members. Tonight, we will hear candidates react to our proposals for affordable housing in Kerry. And to be clear, we are not partisan in our power. We do not and will not favor any political party or candidate. We are dedicated to our agenda, and we will work with any individual, institution, organization, or elected official that supports that agenda. We do not believe in permanent allies or permanent enemies. The concerns of our members, instead, are our guiding star. We gather tonight because we believe that the world is not as it should be. But we also gather tonight because we have hope that the world can be better, that it will be better. We envision the town of Kerry as a place where the people who work here can live here. First responders, teachers, service workers, healthcare workers, just to name a few. We believe that our town should be a place where every resident can prosper, and we believe that that world is possible. And we are inviting council candidates tonight to embrace that vision and join us in making it a reality. Now, my final job tonight is to lead a roll call, to recognize our leaders and institutions that are in support of One Wake's proposal for local affordable housing funding in Kerry. Over 390 individuals were registered to attend this meeting tonight, representing the following institutions who have members in Kerry: Beth Shalom, Kerry First Christian Church, Christ the King Lutheran Church, Covenant Christian Church, Dorcas Ministries, First United Methodist Church of Kerry, Good Shepherd United Church of Christ, Greenwood Forest Baptist Church, Kirk of Kildare Presbyterian Church, Raleigh Mennonite Church, St. Francis United Methodist Church, St. Ambrose Episcopal Church, St. Paul's Episcopal Church, Temple Beth Or, and the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Raleigh. I would also like to recognize the candidates that plan to join us tonight. Mary Innsbrucker, running for District C. Carissa Johnson, running for an at-large seat. Amanda Murphy, running for District C. Jennifer Robinson, running for District A. And Jack Smith, running for District C. Ed Yearha, running for at-large seat, declined to attend our assembly tonight. Ken George, also running for the at-large seat, let us know that he was out of town and unavailable. Thank you, all candidates, for joining us tonight. Now I would like to introduce Howard Manning of Dorcas Ministries to share the need in our community and our proposal to meet it. Howard.
Thank you, Reverend West Spears-Newsome. My name is Howard Manning. Thank you so much for allowing me a few minutes of time with you tonight. I am speaking to you tonight in my role as Executive Director at Dorcas Ministries, which is one of the 46 institutions that do support the advocacy of One Wake. Tonight, I want to speak for just a few minutes about the need for affordable housing in Kerry and One Wake's proposal to address this need. Let me start first by raising a few points about the need. Just 2 nights ago, the Cary Town Council endorsed and unanimously approved the Kerry Housing Plan. That plan is commendable, it's comprehensive, and it lays out a lot of statistics and data for the housing need in our community. It is also in line with the pressures that one-wake member institutions like Dorcas Ministries encounter daily. We realize that the lack of affordable housing does not have a one silver bullet solution, but we also realize that it is a systemic issue that will require systemic solutions. So tonight, for just a few minutes, I'd like to use the town's housing plan that has been recently approved as a focal point for my following comments. I'd like to start first with seniors aging in place. Believe it or not, if you're not a senior, pretty soon you will be. And I think that's the best alternative. So I think I've already reached that milestone. Maybe the rest of you will soon. But Kerry is an aging community. We do realize that. And it's crucial that we support our senior citizens who want to age in place but are on fixed incomes. For example, there's an old historic neighborhood in Cary called Kingswood. Kingwood is a predominantly African-American neighborhood. A lot of the residents of Kingswood can no longer afford to pay property taxes and maintain their homes. That should not be. I believe, and I do believe that you believe, that every effort should be made to allow our longtime, low-income homeowners to age in place and keep their homes and their families so that their children and grandchildren can benefit from the generational wealth created by Cary's growing success. We're all probably aware of the great, I call it economic divide, the lack of upward mobility. If you're born poor, you'll die poor. If you're born rich, there's a very likelihood that you'll die with wealth. So that generational wealth is one of the key tools to maintaining economic stability. Second, I'd like to focus on the plans, talk about displacement of middle income and low income working families. Rising home prices and rents are constraining, in some ways eliminating housing options for middle and low income households. I'm not talking about the people you see walking the streets, pushing buggies, and you know that they're homeless. I'm referring to teachers, nurses, firefighters, food and retail service workers who increasingly cannot live in the towns that they serve. A story was shared with us Tuesday night prior to the plan's approval about a client of a certain agency that did everything they were supposed to do to meet all the qualifications for permanent affordable housing, even having the financial resources they thought themselves. But upon graduation, they were forced to move out of Kerry because they could not find affordable housing in their income range. And oh, by the way, that client was a school teacher at one of our Kerry middle schools. I hope that soaks in on me. That's why I paused for a few minutes. The need for housing for these essential workers is growing. Kerry's housing plan points out a challenging trend. Since 2010, our town has added roughly 20,000 jobs in these occupations. However, the share of homes and rental units in Kerry affordable to these occupations are shrinking. For example, over the last 10 years, the town of Kerry has lost roughly 3,900 rental units affordable to this income bracket due to rising rents. Many residents in Kerry are housing cost burden. That means they pay more than 30% of their income just to keep a roof over their head, not counting the other expenditures that are necessary to live what we call an ordinary life. We believe, and I know that we can, limit foreclosures and evictions and help to stabilize our housing market. Let me switch gears and go to the proposal that One Wake is putting before you tonight. The Cary Housing Plan recommends several strategies to address these needs. As One Wake and as Executive Director of Dorcas Ministries, we feel that one of the strategies in the town's plan is crucial to the success of the others. In other words, a successful outcome depends on a solid foundation. The creation of a new housing fund to preserve and develop affordable housing. The plan is great, but it could be just like a brand new Lamborghini. Without fuel to move it forward, it could be just a pretty ornament on a shelf. Our proposal tonight is aimed at providing fuel for that plan. We're proposing that the Cary Town Council commit a penny for housing to create a designated housing reserve in each annual operating budget that is based on the value of 1 cent, 1 penny, 1 denario per $100 based on the $30.9 billion Kerry tax base, or about $3.2 million per year. A vote by the town council to designate this fund is to provide policy guidance to the town staff as they prepare each year's budget. But it is not as inflexible as a debt obligation, and it does not bind future elected officials. We would also hope that the initial investment and line item for affordable housing in Kerry would not be limited to just our proposal for tonight. That would fluctuate as needs fluctuated and resources are available. There are other cities close to us, Chapel Hill, Carrboro, Asheville, Apex, Durham, Raleigh, and even the Wake County that have provided funding dedicated for affordable housing. I don't think that Kerry would want to do this just because other people are doing it. I would think and would hope that Kerry would want to designate these funds for affordable housing because we have always been a leader in the Triangle area, in the state, and in our nation when it comes to the quality of life for all of us. There's a case study in Chapel Hill that I'd like to bring your attention where DHIC, which the town of Kerry is familiar with, was able to use an investment from the town's housing fund to provide gap financing for the creation of 80 affordable family apartments and 69 affordable senior apartments. By leveraging the town of Chapel Hill's investment, DHIC was able to increase it by 10 times. As a result, the town was able to add 149 affordable units at just the cost of a little bit over $16,000 per unit, not including the value of the land. And oh, and by the way, the land was donated by the town. In conclusion, we find ourselves at a very exciting moment in Kerry's history. If we, and I stress emphasis on the key word we, faith-based community, one-way town of Kerry, citizens, can ensure that long-time and new residents, senior citizens, and young families, homeowners, and tenants are able to enjoy this town, and that everyone who has worked hard to make Kerry into the town that it is today have the opportunity to benefit from our success. When the tide rises, it raises all the ships. Thank you. Now I'd like to yield to Reverend Javier from St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Kerry.
Thank you, Howard. Good evening. My name is Javier Almendares Bautista. I am a priest at St. Paul's Episcopal Church on Union Street. And as we prepare to hear our community stories tonight, I have scripture on my mind. The text is from the Book of Deuteronomy, from the law given to the Israelites upon their entrance to the Promised Land. But set apart a tithe, it reads, of all the yield of your seed that is brought in yearly from the field. And when you reap your harvest in your field and forget a sheaf, you shall not go back to get it. It shall be left for the alien, the orphan, and the widow. And when you beat your olive trees, do not strip what is left. It shall be left for the alien, the orphan, and the widow. And when you gather the grapes of your vineyard, do not glean what is left. It shall be left for the alien and the orphan and the widow. But set apart a tithe of all the yield that is brought in yearly from the field. Friends, tonight we gather to hear about the struggle of hardworking folks right here in Cary. We are here because we listened to thousands of Wake County residents since 2018, and the resounding concern we have heard is the desperate lack of affordable housing. This started before the pandemic, mind you, a pandemic that pulled the rug from under the feet of those who had the least to sacrifice. At St. Paul's, like every community represented here, we get calls from people who have nowhere else to turn when their bills are late and the rent is past due. People making tough decisions about what to pay and what to go without. In the last year alone, we at St. Paul's have distributed more than 10 times the amount we distributed in 2019 to help people in their moment of crisis. Let me say that again. We have distributed 10 times the amount we gave in 2019 for financial emergencies like rent and utility bills. And the year isn't over yet. Meanwhile, Apple recently announced its plans to set roots in Research Triangle Park. In Austin, Texas, where Apple announced the building of a $1 billion campus back in 2018, nearby neighborhoods saw a jump of up to 26% in home prices. All of this took place before Apple even broke ground on their new site. What will this mean for over half of Cary residents earning between $35,000 and $50,000 who are already burdened by housing costs? What will this mean for the 67% of senior renters, 67%, 2/3 of senior renters who spend over 30% of their income on housing? Friends, we celebrate and rejoice in the growth and success of the place we proudly call home. We commend the town council, the town staff, and all the stakeholders who participated in drafting and approving the Cary Housing Plan. Now we are simply hoping to make that vision a reality by setting apart not a tithe, but a penny of all the yield that is brought in yearly from the field. A penny to establish the local housing fund proposed in this plan, a penny to ensure that all Cary families can afford to live where they work, a penny as a return on the investment that generations of hardworking Cary residents have made. Friends, let us set aside a portion of all the yield that is brought in yearly from the field. A case-by-case piecemeal approach will not suffice. A local housing fund is a strong step forward as we chart a path towards sustainable growth and change. We now move to the portion of our evening where we hear the stories that brought us here in the first place. First, we will hear from Miss Sally Jones, a member of Cary First Christian Church, as she tells the story of Cary's African-American community, the founding of Kingswood Elementary School, and the legacy of those who laid the foundation for the Cary we know and love. Next, we will hear from the Reverend Stephanie Workman of Kirk of Kildare Presbyterian Church, as she describes the challenges faced by apartment residents in her neighborhood. And lastly, we will hear from Mr. Ivan Funes, a resident of the Las Americas Mobile Home Park, as he talks about the road ahead for the more than 300 families who live there. Be aware that the audio at the beginning is somewhat faint, so please turn up your volume so that you can hear each story clearly. These are the stories of the people who built this town and those who help maintain it. Stay with us, friends, and let's make sure that Cary is a place that we can all proudly call home. Give us just a moment as we queue up the videos.
Through the pathway where the white school is to our school. And we always said nobody discussed the burning down, but everybody knew it was burnt on purpose. They said, well, we don't have any land. There's no place, for us to build a school. They knew they weren't going to build it back there because it probably would have burned it down again. And so my mother and my uncle, who owned the land up here on there, said, we'll give you the land.
My grandfather gave land too for them to build that school. And I don't want this to be forgotten. A lot of realtors coming in now, putting a whole lot of stuff up. And just at the corner, and they just knocked down Mount Zion Baptist Church. And that just seemed like it was so much history, and now it's gone. It's changing, and they're doing a lot of stuff in Kerry, downtown Kerry, where the water fountain and all of that is. So that's driving a whole lot of stuff up. I would say my aunt's taxes is almost $2,000, and mine probably $3,000. And it just keeps going, and we're wondering how much higher is it going to get. And downtown Kerry hasn't even been finished yet. It's a lot of people who just stay because this is home and this is all they know and this is where they want to be, but they can't afford to build a home or can't afford to fix. The homes have been here so long that they can't afford to fix it, and some people will just say you need to knock it down. So it would be real important that it would be a blessing just to get that help. I don't want it to be forgotten. We're the reason why it's the way it is. So much love that you can feel as soon as you walk through the streets.
How long have you been in this neighborhood? How long have you and your
We've
family been here in this
all
neighborhood?
our lives. Yeah, all our lives. Yeah. Down there from the church over there, all the way down to the corner, and all the way back to the road over there, that was all my grandfather's. He always wanted to be remembered as someone who stood for something, who was busy trying to do something, because not only did he live it, he sold, the part of the land for West Cary. That was his too. He had 15 acres, involved with that. I think he would most likely want them to hold on to, he thought that to be somebody, you had to own something, and stand for something.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Workman, and I'm the Associate Pastor at the Kirk of Kildare Presbyterian Church. A few years ago, we began working with families in the Wren Drive neighborhood. There are 5 apartment complexes where many families live in a very small amount of space. Many of these struggle for a variety of reasons. While they are some of the hardest workers I've ever met, many of them face obstacles, including language barriers, lack of education, difficulty with health care, and all of them deal with the lack of abundant affordable housing. Before the pandemic, we began building relationships with these families through ESL, through a summer program that included food and educational enrichment, and a tutoring program. We loved building relationships with families, and we really loved working with other churches as well. When the pandemic hit, we realized that the biggest need was for feeding, and so we began a robust feeding program thanks to funding from the town of Kerry and from Wake County and from private donations. Throughout all of this, we have continued to listen to our neighbors and listen to the needs. One family said, because of our diabetic situation, We really need air conditioning, which is not required for apartments in the summer. So we began providing mobile air conditioning units. Families have come to us in the middle of the winter and said the heat's not adequate in our apartment. We desperately need something more. As we've continued to listen, we have learned that many of our families don't have an adequate number of beds for their family. That means that children are sharing beds. That means that people are sleeping on couches. And worse, many are sleeping on the floors. And so we began building beds and trying to provide bunk beds for families in need. When we talk about affordable housing, and when you ask me what it means to me, it means that my friends and my neighbors will have a safe place to live, a place where they don't have to worry that all of their income is going to providing a roof over their head, and often a substandard one at that. It means that they can afford things like beds and air conditioning and heat. It means that our community is more diverse and is better because of the diversity. It means that there is a place where everyone is welcome and everyone can live. Thank you.
Buenas noches, mi nombre es Iván Funes y vivo en las Américas por 16 años. Las Américas es un parque de casas móviles donde vivimos 300 familias. Algunas han vivido aquí por más de 20 años. El parque es una de las últimas comunidades de vivienda asequibles en Kerry, con alquileres de $400 por mes. Vemos el crecimiento de nuevos proyectos de vivienda y comercio que aumentan el valor de las propiedades. A pocos kilómetros de mi casa se está construyendo una nueva urbanización llamada Fenton. Esta urbanización contará con un hotel, tiendas costosas y más de 800 unidades multifamiliares que incluyen apartamentos de lujo. Los alquileres de este tipo de apartamentos ascienden a $2,000 por mes. No podemos permitirnos un lugar así para vivir y eso nos causa gran preocupación porque vemos claramente que nuestro vecindario está en peligro de desaparecer. Trabajamos en hotelería, construcción, cuidado de niños y adultos mayores. Hacemos servicios de limpieza, jardinería, entre otros tipos de trabajo. Nuestros hijos van a las escuelas y asistimos a las iglesias locales. Compramos y comemos en los comercios y restaurantes locales, contribuyendo a la economía del pueblo. Como tal, nosotros somos miembros de la comunidad de Kerry, que contribuimos al éxito y al progreso de la ciudad. Hemos oído hablar de otras comunidades de casas móviles que han cerrado y se han convertido en nuevos vecindarios. Cuando esto ocurra con nuestro vecindario, ¿a dónde iremos? Nuestras vidas están aquí. Kerry es nuestro hogar. Si nos vemos obligados a mudarnos, podemos perder nuestros trabajos. Tendríamos que desarraigar a nuestros hijos de sus colegios y amigos, incluso cambiar de iglesia. Es de vital importancia que la ciudad de Kerry equilibre y priorice las necesidades de todos en su comunidad, apoyando la vivienda a precio asequible. Gracias por escucharnos. Buenas noches.
Thank you for listening to the stories of the community we know and love. I'd now like to introduce the Reverend Michael Brickhouse, pastor of Cary First Christian Church, and the Reverend Wolfgang Hertzlane of Christ the King Lutheran Church.
Good evening, everyone. I am Michael Brickhouse, and I have this distinct privilege to serve as the pastor of Cary First Christian Church, where the living legend Sally Jones is one of our members. And I'm here with my brother and friend, Reverend Wolfgang Hertzlane. As we prepare to speak to our candidates, I must stop for a moment and pause to reflect on the stories that we just heard, what powerful testimonies were given. In my faith tradition, there's this song that we often sing. It says, there's a storm out on the ocean, and it's moving this old way. If your soul's not anchored, you will surely drift away. And Kerry, we must understand that there is a storm out on the ocean, a storm of housing crisis, a storm that will wipe out our communities if we are not anchored. And how do we get anchored? I think One Wake has proposed the plan for us. Fund the housing plan. Make an effort to ensure that communities have resources to sustain the storm that's on its way. And so our role tonight is to ask the candidates who are running for office, if elected, are they going to help us be anchored for the storm that's coming? Are they willing to work with One Wake to pass a new local funding stream for affordable housing? Now, remember, One Wake is a non-partisan organization. We do not endorse candidates or political parties, but we are eager to work with any decision maker who will support our agenda. Our proposal is for the town of Kerry to pass a penny for housing initiative based on similar programs that have already been implemented in Chapel Hill, Durham, Raleigh, and Apex. We have organized this early candidate event because we believe that this issue is too important to wait until next year. This early event is an opportunity to understand where candidates initially stand on this issue. And we expect that the position of the candidates here tonight will evolve over the next 3 months before the start of early voting. And for that reason, we will be asking more open-ended questions tonight with the understanding that as the election draws closer, we will expect candidates to clarify their positions further. For our candidates, there's a few instructions that we have for you. In a moment, we will ask each candidate to respond to a question in alphabetical order by last name. Each candidate will be asked the same question, and each candidate will have 3 minutes to respond. 3 minutes. We will keep time, and we will give each candidate a 30-second warning. Then, at 3 minutes, we will ask you to stop. Following your response, I or Wolfgang may ask a clarifying question just to make sure that we fully understand your position. We will treat every candidate the same way, and we will operate fairly as we go through these questions. So here are the questions here's question 1 for tonight. And our first question will go to Mary Inspucker, who is the District C candidate. And we thank you for being with us tonight. The question is, the Kerry Housing Plan calls for the creation of a housing fund to provide gap funding for the development of all new affordable housing. Similar housing funds have been created in Chapel Hill, Durham, Raleigh, and Apex through the passage of a Penny for Housing initiative. If elected, will you follow the recommendation of the Kerry Housing Plan to dedicate town funding to support the development and preservation of affordable housing in Kerry? Why or why not? And please elaborate on how you think the town could invest in a housing fund. First up is our first candidate, Mary Inspucker. I think she's still muted. If we could unmute. You're unmuted. We should be able to hear you now.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. Thank you.
Awesome. I had unmuted here, but it said I'm not allowed, so I waited. First of all, thank you so much for including me in this. I am so happy to be here. I want to start by saying happy Veterans Day to all the veterans, and thank you for your service. And, you know, unfortunately, a lot of our veterans are affected by this affordable housing issue, along with other heroes like our police, our teachers, our firefighters, our medical caregivers, people that care for this community but cannot afford to live here. And this is a shame. So I do support the Cary housing plan. I'm behind it. And what I'd rather say on top of that is I am not only for it, but I want to take it from paper to reality. We have so many things on paper. We got to get some things going. So I like also that it had some environmental and transit issues alongside of it. But look, you've all seen it, I'm sure. Community development blocks, Cary Housing Fund, task credits, Wake County Affordable Housing, the OASIS program. I mean, I've got all kinds of sheets of paper here on it and in my research. And Cary Minimum Housing Program, neighborhood improvement grants. Going even further to the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency, where they'll help with 5% of a loan amount and give $8,000 a down payment to those in need. And then of course we have the self-help that just went through with the Wake County Board of Commissioners. So what I also like in this program is the partnerships. I was a regional director from one of the largest nonprofits in the Midwest, and I dealt with partnerships all day and all night, and always to do with housing. And it took a lot to get our housing program over the finish line, and it took those partnerships. So I have a lot of experience and skills to bring churches, corporations, communities, and nonprofits, everybody together to get to that finish goal that we're all trying to. Something interesting too that I came across that I would like, if I get on town council, to investigate and be part of is, you may have heard this, some of the tech giants, and someone mentioned this earlier in the program, they're coming. And of course,
this is your 30-minute warning. You have 30 seconds left.
That's fast. Okay, well, anyway, they're actually giving billions to help because they know they're causing a crisis when it comes to affordable housing. So I am happy to be on this discussion. I want to hear more. I'm going in the community listening to people because I want my platform to be your platform, and come to me with your concerns. And I'm happy to think of you not just as a voter, but as my customer and get this done.
Well, thank you so much for staying within the time limit. Pastor Brickhouse, do you have a clarifying question you'd like to ask?
I do. Thank you, Wolfgang, for asking. I just want to be clear because I heard you talk about the funding that's listed in the plan, but I want to make sure that we're clear. Do you, as a candidate, do you support local funding for the development and the preservation of affordable housing in Cary?
Absolutely, I do.
Thank you, and I'll pass it now to Wolfgang.
Well, thank you so much, Reverend Brickhouse. Our next candidate to speak is Carissa Johnson, who is running for an at-large seat. Welcome, Ms. Johnson. Thank you for being here. And just to remind you, you have 3 minutes, and the question is, if elected, will you follow the recommendation of the Cary Housing Plan to dedicate town funding to support the development and preservation of affordable housing in Cary?
Thank you. And I'm unmuted?
Yep.
Good to go. Okay. Well, thank you so much for having me here. I'm very nervous, but I'm very excited. And thank you, One Wake. I know you've been doing just a ton of hard work. And all the people that have taken the time to talk to me, thank you, thank you, thank you. I know I've been asking a lot of questions. I'm grateful to be part of this forum, but also I want to make sure I'm very clear on where I stand because I am running to represent the entirety of Cary. If elected, I would wholeheartedly follow the recommendations of the Cary Housing Plan and the plan to dedicate funding to support development and preservation of affordable housing in Cary. That is a no-brainer to me, so I'm all in. I would be proud to be part of the leadership that establishes a housing fund in addition to what the town is already doing. To me, this question of funding this more comprehensive plan is a question about how to address housing security for Cary residents, much like the stories we just heard. I come from a very loving family, very modest means. And for many years, my family was among those that were cost burdened when it comes to housing costs. That experience, my experience with local organizations, I've worked with quite a few, some that provide low to moderate income housing. It's taught me quite a lot. And I see this affordable housing challenge as an opportunity to tackle several challenges and fund those challenges in tandem. I think that Cary residents are passionate about several things. And I think there's three primary responsibilities for the Cary staff and the council in their response to the affordable housing problem. I think first we need to acknowledge that this is a crisis. That's, I think, the correct word. The experiences of housing cost burdened people is nationwide, it's state, it's county, but it's also a municipal challenge. Cooperation is going to be key with partnerships at every level. And this crisis must be addressed really transparently and out in the open with a great deal of collaboration. Second, we have to be agile in our plans. Part of being agile to me is understanding that we need to work quickly and be willing to revisit priorities. I understand that there's typically years of fiduciary review. Planning it takes time. And this is a significant investment of taxpayer money. And that's critical, but I think we need to treat the accelerating deficit of affordable housing.
You have 30 seconds left.
Yeah. And third, I think we need to be adaptive and have a multi-pronged approach. I believe we can make great gains on environmentally friendly building and addressing mass transit and transportation issues while addressing the affordable housing challenges. I'm an open book. You can visit electcarissa.com. I'd really love for folks to take my citizen survey and tell me what you as an individual Cary citizen really think about this issue and how we should address it. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your answer. And just to make sure we heard you correctly, Ms. Johnson, I heard you say that in addition to all the other funding sources that are out there, you are in support of using local resources for affordable housing.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Back to you, Reverend Brickhouse.
Thank you. Next up, we have candidate Amanda Murphy, who is a District C candidate. Candidate Murphy, if elected, will you follow the recommendation of the Cary Housing Plan to dedicate town funding to support the development and preservation of affordable housing in Cary? Why or why not? And please elaborate on how you think the town could invest in a housing fund.
Hey guys, I'm honored to be invited to be here tonight. As everyone's mentioned, housing affordability in Wake County is a complex issue, one that's going to require hard work and creative ideas from multiple stakeholders. There's no question the need is real and growing. I was always taught that if you want to see where a community's values are, look at how they spend their money. So I was looking at the budget recently, and about $300,000 in Cary's budget's allocated for affordable housing capital projects. Quarterly appropriations added to that for a total of about $600,000. The same day the town approved this housing plan, they also approved a $775,000 improvement to the Cary Tennis Center. I think the town could invest in a housing fund by reallocating money from lower priority budget items to those items supporting affordable housing. I think we're going to have to be flexible in considering options, including those that other municipalities have tried. This is not just a Cary problem, as Carissa said, it's nationwide, affecting many communities. I know Cary is different and should be handled as such, but I think there's methods that have been employed nationwide and communities near us that can and would work in Cary. We're fortunate to get to partner with nonprofits to meet the needs of our citizens. I've worked with Habitat recently, helping scrub floors and hammer nails on Trimble Avenue in Cary. If elected, I vow to support One Wake's initiative to follow the recommendation of the Kerry Housing Plan and dedicate funding to support the development and preservation of affordable housing in Kerry. Part of keeping Kerry great is seeing the good in our community and working hard to maintain and improve it. Careful planning and consideration are important, but too often they are used to delay action until the political winds change. We can't wait for the perfect solution. We have the Kerry Housing Plan. It's time to fund it and take action. If any community can bring funding, creativity, innovation, and good planning to the issue of housing affordability, it's Kerry. I have faith that we can work together to make headway on this issue. Again, thank you for having me. I'm so honored to just be invited.
30 seconds. Thank you, Ms. Miller.
Thank you. And I look forward to listening and communicating more with all you passionate folks about our community. Thanks for letting me be here.
Thank you for your response. I'll now pass it to my colleague, Wolfgang Hertzlein.
Yes, that brings us to Jennifer Robinson, who is running in District A. Again, Ms. Robinson, in 3 minutes, will you please answer this question? If elected, will you follow the recommendation of the Kerry Housing Plan to dedicate town funding to support the development and preservation of affordable housing in Kerry? Why or why not? And feel free within your 3 minutes to elaborate on how you think that the town could invest in a housing fund.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we understand you had some internet issues, so you are on the phone, I guess?
Yes.
So we can't see you, but we can hear you.
I'm calling.
Yes.
You can hear me. Good. I'm calling from the Yosemite National Park in California.
Oh, right.
So thank you so much for having me. Yeah. And if I lose connection, it is just because I'm in a national park and it's hard to get good connectivity here. But thank you so much for having me. In short, yes, I support dedicated funds for affordable housing as outlined in the newly adopted housing plan. I'm really proud to be part of the council that has brought this forward and to be taking the initiatives that we've done, like putting $4.1 million into affordable housing needs for this past year. And in previous years, investing money. Like past years, I would recommend that we do a multi-pronged approach. I would love for us to use these funds to continue to partner with our nonprofits in our region that are serving the population that needs affordable housing. In addition to that, I would love for us to go back to a project that we had tried, I think it was probably about 2000, 2001, where we had a revolving fund that issued very, very low interest rate loans. I mean, they were like crazy low to people to have affordable homes so that people could enjoy home ownership. Among the other things that are a priority to me is definitely senior housing and making sure that we can help our seniors stay in their homes and keep those homes livable, because that is a real challenge for a lot of people. I also would like us to do whatever we can for our public servants. People have often mentioned the firefighters, the policemen, and the teachers, the nurses, people with the modest incomes that need the assistance. So I would definitely be looking for opportunities to prioritize helping our families that serve our community. And thank you for having me.
Well, thank you. And thank you for your answer. I do have a clarifying question. I heard you say, I think, that the town spent $4.1 million on affordable housing last year, I suppose you said. I also heard someone else say, well, I heard one of the other candidates said that number was 600,000. So clearly there needs to be some clarification as to what those funds were and where they came from and what they were spent on.
For those of you who followed the creation of the affordable housing or the housing plan, Kerry's housing plan, you know that Dana Widmer and Morgan Manser were the two authors of that report for us on our staff. And I got that number from Dana Widmer yesterday. I called her and I asked her, how much did we put into initiatives to help affordable housing in this past year? And she said the number was 4.1 million for this past year.
And I suppose that would be all sources. Yeah. Right, that's all sources like GDPG money and whatever other money.
That's all the sources, yes. Yeah, and I think everybody needs to understand that we have a lot of latitude with the CDBG funds. We could put them to sidewalks, we could do them, use it for economic development initiatives, but we have chosen to put that money into affordable housing. And that is a choice by the council. And I think it's one that has really, staked our position on supporting affordable housing.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you, Ms. Robinson. And back to Pastor Brickhouse.
Thank you. Next, last but certainly not least, in this round of questioning will be candidate Jack Smith. Following his response, we do have a second question for all of our candidates. But Councilman Smith, if elected, will you follow the recommendation of the Kerry Housing Plan to dedicate town funding to support the development and preservation of affordable housing in Kerry? Why or why not? Please elaborate on how you think the town could invest in a housing fund.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for having us tonight. And I'm quite impressed with the amount of people that are on the phone. I also welcome and appreciated your comments about remembering that today is Veterans Day. As the only veteran on the council, those words were important to me. We've had a blessed day of events supporting our veterans. As been mentioned before, and I'm not going to belabor it, veterans, everybody out there, we have a housing crisis. If there's anything that I have learned from one wake in particular in recent months is the seriousness continues to grow and has been exacerbated by COVID. As Jennifer said, we have invested over $4.1 million. We do that every year. Yes, some of that is CBG funds. And to be very clear, there's absolutely no problem with having a program with the Penny for Housing initiative. So you won't have to ask the clarifying question. I think I want to make it clear that is supported. We are so proud of what we did on Tuesday. It wasn't like this was a 90-day package that we went into a room and decided on how we're going to do our plan for affordable housing. It has been years in the making, and it has been complemented by the things that we have done. And, we basically have three fundamental areas, and that is that we continue to make sure that Kerry is inclusive and people of all income levels can live here and enjoy the benefits of Kerry. We are cursed with being, depending on which survey you want to believe, the #1 place in the country. And we take no pride that we could do better in our affordable housing. And I think you heard last Tuesday, for those of you that were watching, we're doing that. And we had a strong commitment from everybody on that council. Just for the record, I grew up in a blue collar family. I had a conversation.
You're down to 30 seconds, Mr. Smith.
Thank you. You've heard the commitment to the funding. Where we will invest immediately to help is in partnerships and land acquisition, because that's where we can get the best value. And that's where we can maybe address in a more timely fashion, alleviating some of this complex problem.
Thank you for emphasizing your support of our Penny for Housing plan and sharing that we don't need to ask for a clarifying question. So I just want to thank you for that. We'll now move to our second round of questioning for our candidates. And we'll begin again with candidate Mary Inspucker. Here's the question for you. And we're just asking all candidates for a yes or no response to this question, just a yes or no response. Candidate Inspucker, will you commit to attend a listening session with Kerry residents who are directly impacted by housing pressure before the start of early voting next year? If we could unmute her again, Devin, please.
you should see an alert from the host to ask you to unmute.
I'm muting and I'm unmuting.
We can hear you. We can hear you now.
You can hear me now?
I'll ask.
Okay. So can a candidate really answer yes or no? I say absolutely yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to Ms. Johnson with the same question. Will you commit to attend a listening session with Kerry residents who are directly impacted before the early voting starts?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
To Amanda Murphy, will you commit to attending a listening session with Kerry residents who are directly impacted by housing pressures before the start of early voting next year?
Yes, I'd be happy to be there.
Okay, then next is Jennifer Robinson. Will you come back from California and commit to attend a listening session with Kerry residents
Absolutely.
who are directly impacted? Thank you.
And Jack Smith, will you commit to attend a listening session with Kerry residents who are directly impacted by housing pressures before the start of early voting next year?
Yes.
Thank you to all of our candidates for your time and your responses today. I'll now pass the baton to Reverend Dr. Rose Cornelius from Dorcas Ministry.
Good evening, everyone. My role for this evening is to clarify what we've heard so far and to move us to next steps. Tonight, we learned that over a dozen institutions in Kerry, that's houses of faith, as well as nonprofits, have partnered through One Wake to address the urgent need to preserve and construct new affordable housing in Kerry. Hundreds of members from these institutions are attending this assembly tonight. What is clear is that longtime, low-income homeowners, especially African-American homeowners, are increasingly forced to leave the town that they helped build over centuries. And what is also clear is that newer residents of Kerry who helped keep the town running struggle to afford rising rents and live in what sometimes substandard housing. That's just not right. It's not just. It should not be. If we want to make change on this issue of affordable housing, we must ensure that the town of Kerry's priorities are to make a substantial investment in affordable housing. Next spring's budget process is our best opportunity to do this. That means we have to enter the competitive political arena of the spring budget process and make sure that this issue stays at the top of our towns and our county's priorities. Our purpose is to build power to make change in Wake County and Kerry. Power is organized people acting consistently and persistently. That last part, persistence, is critical. To make change on this important issue, we will need to continue to organize our communities and prepare to act this spring. What does that mean? That means that we have to do the work because we cannot hold elected officials accountable if we're not holding ourselves accountable. As our next step, we need to continue to work to build momentum, the momentum necessary to address this urgent issue. Our strategy is to make affordable housing the top election issue in Kerry next spring. In order to do that, we are calling on every One Wake member institution represented here tonight to pledge to support a nonpartisan get out the vote effort in February and March leading up to the election on March 7th, 2022. We are asking every member institution to pledge to deliver leaders to the Get Out the Vote training in late January to lead this effort in their communities. We're going to try to do this a new way tonight since we're all attending this assembly virtually. First, I will report which institutions have pledged to support this canvassing effort already. Then I will tell you how you can sign up tonight as an individual. The institutions that have already signed up and have committed people, Christ the King Lutheran Church has committed 5 members. Greenwood Forest Baptist Church, 3 members. Kirk of Kildare Presbyterian Church, 3 members. St. Paul's Episcopal Church, 5 members. Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Raleigh, 10 members. Our neighbors in Raleigh are even going to help us canvass and carry. I think that's very commendable. And that's a great start. In 2020, One Wake leaders who participated in our nonpartisan Get Out the Vote campaign organized an average of 30 voters each. That means that our 30 leaders pledged so far have the potential to contact about 900 Kerry voters. Isn't that phenomenal? Our goal is to reach 1,500 voters through nonpartisan outreach to ensure that this important municipal election is not lost in the noise of the spring primaries. That means we need at least 20 volunteers to reach our goal. If you want to help One Wake reach this goal tonight, please take out your phones and text the word VOTE, V-O-T-E, to 919-635-4770. Once again, text VOTE, V-O-T-E, to 919-635-4770. Thank you. And now I'd like to introduce my friend, Rabbi Ariel.
Thank you, Dr. Rose. It's my pleasure. I'm Rabbi Ariel Edry from Bet Shalom, and it's my pleasure to conclude our assembly this evening with a prayer. So this evening, God, we pray for our community and we pray for our leaders. May God inspire us as a community to do what is right and help each family secure a home. And may God guide our leaders to take the actions needed to allow our teachers, healthcare workers, police officers, people living on disability income, retired seniors, young families, and so many others to remain a vital part of our community, to stay home, to not be pushed out of town. We are well aware of the market forces creating this situation, but we know that there is much that is in our hands. We know that we here in Kerry do have the means to make things right. It all starts with making our decision, a decision to invest in our people, to invest in our neighbors, in our families. We are thankful for our community and our leaders who have stepped up and approved a housing plan, a plan that also calls for a housing fund to preserve and develop affordable housing. This is an important first step. But now that we will have a fund, it's time for us to decide and commit to put our funds in it. We were reminded earlier today by Father Javier how in the Bible, God asked us to give a tithe to the needy, to give a little from our bounty so all can live with dignity. In that same spirit, we are calling our town council leaders to pass the penny for housing proposal, to dedicate not a tithe, but 1 penny per $100 in our town's $30 billion yearly revenue. So we pray to you, O God, to give our elected officials the wisdom and the courage to do what is right and complete the job. Give our leaders the strength to not give in to market forces, but to actually gather the forces and resources in our community and secure access to a home for everyone. God's prophets gave us a vision of peace. They spoke of the day when everyone lives in their own home, and in the words of Prophet Micah, each one sits under their own vines and their own fig trees with nothing to be afraid of. So we pray to you, O God, for our community. Give us strength and persistence that we continue to show up and speak up and call our town leaders to act on our best shared values. And we pray to you, O God, for the leaders we elect. Give them the will and the courage to do what is right for our community, which is to care and support all our neighbors, each family in our town. God, give us the will to make that vision of peace come true here in our town, that we make Kerry a community in which everyone continues to live in their home, sitting under our oak trees and pine trees with nothing to be afraid of. Amen. This concludes our assembly this evening, and in the name of everybody at One Wake and all of us, I'd like to thank all of you neighbors from Kerry who took the time and care to be here today. I'd like to thank all those of you who shared your stories, your wisdom and your caring and your good intentions. And also thank our elected officials and the candidates and all those who work for our town who participated today. Have a blessed evening, everyone.
Some your heart, we are one.